Hello everyone, Lisa here with you today. I'm going to be creating two cards for you in the video today using this Imperial Garden stamp set and dies, and I'm going to be adding colour without colouring, and there's plenty of ways you can do that. I'm also going to be using these two cover dies, the Craft Around and the Crafty Plaid cover dies for my cards today. So let's get started. For my first card, I thought I would add my colour to the background and keep the images black and white. So I'm going to start with some ink blending, and I'm using Oxide inks here, and I've changed the cardstock this week from what I was using last week. This is actually the Tim Holtz watercolour, distress watercolour cardstock, and it is supposed to be great for distress inks and oxides and of course many other techniques. And it's been a long time since I've tried ink blending on it, but I thought I would give that a go today, and I have to say I really liked how the oxides blended on this cardstock. I'm only using two colours today, Scattered Straw and Saltwater Taffy, and I make sure that I clean my desk in between so that I don't bring any of that colour into the cardstock in the wrong area as I'm blending. So you'll see me clear up in between, but I'm now going to go in with the Scattered Straw and I'm going to overlap the Saltwater Taffy. And because I'm using a yellow next to a pink, where they overlap I will get a lovely orange peachy colour as well, and you can really see that coming in there as I go backwards and forwards between the two colours. Wouldn't it be nice if we could blend this fast in real life? So I've finished the panel now, and I'm going to run that through the die cutting machine with this lovely cover die. This is the Crafty Plaid cover die, really pretty, and I thought it would make a great background for my flowers today. So now just removing the tape after I've run it through the machine, and I did run it through my machine twice and with a metal shim. It is quite a detailed die, so I wanted to make sure that I got a really good cut, because also the distress watercolour cardstock is actually quite thick. It's thicker than Nina 80, so I wanted to make sure I didn't have any areas that were uncut, and I'm just removing all the little pieces now with my brush tool. I thought all the scrap pieces were really pretty and would have made for a great shaker, but I didn't do that today, and this is a look at the panel now that it's been die cut. So we're going to move on to our first lot of stamping now. I'm taking the outline image of the flower and the solid layer image for the leaves. So I'm going to stamp both of those with a black pigment ink. I really want that black to be crisp, and I do a double stamp on the leaves just to make sure that I get really good coverage. So I'm just adding that onto my images now, and I'm going to press that down, and it does look really good even after the first pass, but I do often double stamp a solid image just to make sure that there is good coverage. And off camera I repeated the process so that I would have two floral images and two leaf images. I'm just running those through the die cutting machine now, and there you can see the four final images, and this is where I think I'm going to go with my card, but we'll come back to that card in a moment and we'll work on the stamping for the second card. And I'm actually going to use the stamp layering element on my second card, and the stamp set comes with this really handy guide which shows you exactly what lines up where, so they're really simple to create. And we're going to start off again with the outline image of both the flower and the leaves this time. And for this stamping I used a dye ink, so I'm using Memento Tuxedo black ink here. I thought that if I use the pigment ink again when I add the coloured ink over the top of these images, that it would probably smudge, because pigment ink stays wet so much longer. So I did double stamp my images. It is a bit of a habit for me. The advantage of the MISTI is that you can do that really, really easily, and they often don't need it, but I continue to do it anyway. So we're going to move on now to the first layer, and for this I've taken the solid stamp for the leaves and for the flower as well. And the stamps are really easy to line up. I didn't have any problems at all. Apologies for my head there, but I just wanted to make sure that I got them absolutely correct. And now I'm going to add my first layer of ink. So on the leaves, I'm going to use a light green and the flower a light pink. And you can use any dye inks that you have here. So I'm using some Altenew ones, but the Pink Fresh ones are really lovely and layer well. I don't have a lot of the colours at the moment, but for the leaves, there's only two stamping layers anyway, apart from the outline. And on the flower, you get the outline, and then there is 3 layers on top. So you need 2 different coloured greens and 3 different coloured pinks, and you'll be good to go. I actually chose to do a double stamp for each of my layers, so I'm doing my second stamp here for the second layer. I really wanted to make sure that I could see the difference between those colours. So my final layer now on the flower is a dark pink, and again I do stamp that twice. I really think that you can see a difference between all 3 colours when you double stamp, but that is a personal preference, it isn't necessary. And just running those through the die cutting machine now, and off camera I did stamp up another set of leaves and another flower because I'm going to want 4 for my cards. So this is how they look when they're all stamped up and cut and ready to go. So we're going to look at assembling the cards now. For my first card, I'm adhering the blended panel now with some wet adhesive. I could have used a double-sided adhesive sheet on the back, but I prefer to use wet adhesive as it does give you time to readjust the panel if you need to. So I'm adding some on. You really don't need to have this in every bit of your panel. I tap off the excess on the side just to make sure that none of that's going to seep through, and I'm adding it now onto a panel of white cardstock. And I take a piece of paper here as well, and I put that down over the top, and I run my fingers over it. I'm just pressing down here just to make sure that that's adhered as best as possible. So adding some more wet adhesive now onto the back, and I'm just going to put that down onto a top folding A2 white note card. And once I'm happy with how that's looking, I'm going to take my die cuts and just position them over the panel just to see whereabouts I want them to be before I actually start gluing them down. And starting with the flowers, I've actually added some foam tape onto the flower at the bottom, and what I do here is I just create a little hinge. I often find that easier than trying to remember where exactly to put that down. So I've just added a bit of tape there, flipped it over, added my glue, and then pressed it back down, and that just makes it a lot easier for me to add my second flower and know that it's all in the right place. And now it's time to add the leaves, so I'm actually just chopping a little bit off each of the sides of the leaves so that I can insert them behind the flowers. I never really know which is the easiest way of doing this. If I put the leaves down first, they may not be quite in the right place, so often I put the flowers first, but it means that I have to chop bits off the leaves. So that is what I did for the first card, but you'll see I do it the other way round on the second, and it does work out well whichever way you decide to do it. And moving on to our background now for the second card, I have die cut 3 panels using the Craft Around Meraki Paradise, and I'm going to adhere these all together in a stack. I wanted to have some dimension on my second card under the flowers, and just to give it a little bit more interest because it's a white on white. So I'm adding the glue on, tapping off the excess, and then I'm just sticking those 3 panels together and adding them now onto a top folding card base. And we're going to add our flowers now in the same way as I did for the first card. I have actually changed the position a little bit. I've done them more down towards the bottom right hand section of the card. So this time I flipped it around and I added the leaves in first. I do think it's a little bit more fiddly that way, but I did manage to get the position of them right and I didn't end up having to chop them down. And I'm just faffing around a little bit here, just making sure I'm happy with the direction of the leaves and how they are looking before I actually adhere the flowers down on top. And here we have the 2 cards almost done. I just need to add my sentiments now. And I'm taking 2 sentiments from the Celebrate You stamp set. Such a sweet set. I'm dying to use those birds, but for today I've just stamped and heat embossed 2 of the sentiments onto black cardstock. So just thinking now where to position that so that I'm happy with it, and I just added some foam tape onto the back of it as well so that it's got a little bit of dimension. Doing the same now for the sentiment on this card. I've taken the backing off the foam tape and I'm just using tweezers and working out where to position that down over the flowers. I'm not happy with it, so I pick it up and I try again. And guess what? I actually end up putting it back down in the exact same place that I took it up from. So go figure, I should have gone with my gut feel when I first put it down. And that brings us to the end of the cards for today. So I hope that you enjoyed seeing the cards come together. I'll be back next week with another video for you. In the meantime, I hope that you have a wonderful day.